Real fetish.
My life's like a movie, paparazzi picture. If it's to get richer.
Real fetish.
So what was your favorite fantasy flight party that we ever did?
It's the one we're about to do in Costa Rica.
That's not a fantasy flight party.
That's
kink in Costa Rica.
Okay.
Like
okay.
from
the before days.
From the days when we were doing bachelorette and birthday and divorce parties. What was your favorite?
From the days when we was lugging that 60-pound massage table and 80-pound pole. Those days.
Hell yeah.
Across the country?
When we would show up and put a pole in any room in your house.
Anywhere, because you pay for it.
Your popcorn ceiling about to get a pole in it.
They were all so special for so many reasons.
So, like, what's a couple of things that stood out? Like, that
Okay.
stood out to you?
Okay, so Miami stood out to me because you know, like it was like a sister's birthday party.
Was that the one I had to get snuck out the back because somebody's husband showed up?
No, that was one of my not so favorite ones. No, it was another one. It was with all the black women in Miami, and it was like it was so many of them. It was like 20 women, and they were so live. And I love that party. One of the reasons why I love that party is because it just felt like if I never left Miami, I would have been going to that party. And so it was like they were just having so much fun, and the party kind of took itself. I was like, I brought the stuff, and then they were just so like funny and so lit. It was just like, do y'all thing. And every now and then they ask a question, or you would come out the room and they would be like, ooh. That was a favorite. Another favorite is in Ocala when we was in the man cave.
Oh yeah, that party was wild. Like the pictures that I have from that party are still like
in rotation.
They still in rotation, and people will still be like, "Yo, when and where was that?" That was a lit ass party.
And then, gosh, there's just so many. I love when we party. There's a group of women that eventually we made it to Atlantic City with them, but it started with one of their homegirls in Tampa, and then like she introduced us to their friend group, and then their friend group. You know,
I love like
those.
that group of the women in Queens as well.
Right.
That was one of my favorite parties. One of the first ones we did in Queens. The Atlantic City one. If it was an episode on a TV show, it would have been my favorite episode of that TV show.
And my least favorite.
But my experience with it, and it had nothing to do with the women or their actual party, but it was like, I think like the massage table was lost by shipping. So we had to buy a massage table. Now, if you ain't from Jersey and you don't know about Atlantic City, like other than the casinos, and the casinos are the casinos, but like some parts of AC, like that shit wild.
I didn't know Atlantic City was like that.
Atlantic City could get very sketchy in certain aspects, areas, and manifestations and whatnot. And we were like looking for this massage table. And it was like someone's like, I know somebody who's got a massage table. Like one of those, like I know a guy who's got a guy.
Yeah.
And massage tables shouldn't have to be purchased in that way.
Oh, but
it had to. In our situation, it had to be. So like we was like in this back alley shit behind the boardwalk, and this dude was like, yeah, we got the stuff. Like, it was like I was buying like a brick or some shit.
I know, and I was waiting in the car like, oh God, like I hope he comes out.
Like I'm gonna get kidnapped over this massage table and shit, grown napped or whatever the fuck. And so like I'm walking through this, it's all dark in there and shit. Like it was literally like I was trying to exchange hostages with them or some shit. And it's like I come out with this massage table that somehow was heavier than our original. It's like that shit was like 100 pounds. It was like a massage table that's probably like one of them joints that they probably stole that shit from Massage Envy or something.
It probably had no business leaving where it was at.
and they sure as fuck shouldn't have been giving massages in the spot where it was at. I felt like they had people making fake Gucci bags in there. That shit was wild as hell. And then so, anyway, get this massage table. And then when we're leaving, they lose that massage table in shipping.
Sending it back
to us. So it's like, but that was just like a crazy ass situation. Yeah. But another one that stands out to me, and it will probably always be my favorite because of the connection that was made at that party. It was in either VA or Maryland. And we're doing a party for all the ladies and stuff. And I also remember this one because this is the one where you decided to leave another company that you have been selling toys for and was just like, I'm just going to be Jet Set and Jasmine, and it's going to be all my own shit.
They wrote me a little nasty letter about our party.
Yeah, fuck that company.
Right.
I'm sure they're bankrupt by now. But they the husband was upstairs for most of the party. And then we were doing our demonstration on the swing and all this kind of shit. And it was like, I don't know how he kind of like made his way downstairs at that time.
Well, he was such a doting husband. I think he was coming down to like make sure everything was all right.
Like, King ain't down there fingering nobody, right?
Basically. He came down to see if she like needed something to drink or something like that.
And we were like, hey, let's get you
and
your lady in the swing. And he had shared that he was a veteran. And he was just like, yo, there's a lot of things that I would like to do that I can't do because I have like, it was like shrapnel or something in his back. So, certain positions and certain holds and things like that were causing pain. So I was like, yo, like if you use the swing in this position, because he said like, yo, I like back shots. I like hitting them back shots. So I was like, yo, if you're standing here and she's in the swing this way, then the back is supporting you, and you were showing her like different positions that she can do in the swing where he can still have that. And exactly. And I will always remember that party because it was like, he had that now like, oh, I love y'all, but y'all got to go because I'm about to get these back
Make
shots.
Sure you buy that
like,
swing.
I'm buying that swing. You know what I'm saying? But I always think about that because it's something that's not spoken about very often is, whether it be aging and, our bodies change or injury and our bodies change or illness and our bodies change. How do we maintain and continue our sex lives or pivot what our sex life is into a way that is still pleasurable for us and our partner? And you are actually like a fucking expert on that shit, on intimacy, post-injury. So I want to go over like, how will we,
about it.
Like how can we grow? How can we pivot? How can we enhance our sex lives when we do have injuries or illnesses?
That was definitely one of the parties that I was like, like this is why we do what we do, right? It's like we always see that, but it was so specific and so like in our face of like, how is this couple going to, be able to enjoy sex for the next 20, 30, 40 plus years? And I'm sure, they would have figured something out, and they were figuring something out because they were just very loving and affectionate with each other. But I really felt like we were able to enhance that for them. And so there are a lot of specialists and experts out there, but just to kind of share my background, I am a gerontologist. So I have studied aging. And I always thought that it was important to study aging because that's something that I certainly wanted to do. And I wanted to be able to do it gracefully. I also wanted to, no matter what our business and our livelihood was, I want to cater to people over an extended period of time. And so in order to do that, is to figure out how do people age and what like pain points, no pun intended, would people have that we would be able to like pivot our work towards. And my work with veterans and people in medical settings has always been influenced by the medical community, right? So like someone is sick, like what pills do they need to feel better? What treatments do they need medically to be able to like go home? But I always looked at it, and this is sort of like the therapist aspect for me. Go home and do what? Go home and do what for why? And usually our forms of intimacy and relationship is why we do the things we do. Like why people fight so hard when they're sick is because they want to be there for, you know, and for what? For who? It usually is some relationship, whether it's the relationship to friends or family, relationship to something that they're passionate about. It's usually intimacy is on the other end of what we fight for wellness around. So I started to challenge the medical spaces that I worked in to add that component. Like, what is intimacy for this person, and how can we use that to like encourage them to get better? Also, what besides like if they can go to the bathroom, if they could take their pills and like, you know, sleep and all this kind of stuff, like what do they do for fun? You know, what do they do to connect with other people that like if they could do this thing that their life would actually be improved? Because if you told me like, yeah, this pill will help you get out of bed, I'm like, okay, great. But like get out of bed to do what? Yeah. You know, if you told me that, okay, this pill is going to help you be able to go to some, like, I don't know, whatever, FetCon or things that I get excited about, you know, or Costa Rica or some kinky shit, you know, or, then I'd be like, oh yeah, like, let me get that. So, so what I have found is that a lot of people, because of our own issues around sex and sexuality and shame, and a lot of physicians, medical providers, therapists are uncomfortable asking people about intimacy. And, you know, in my work, people were like, okay, I don't know how to ask the doctor this, but when are we going to be able to have sex again? Or my husband is paralyzed from the neck down, and I have no idea, like, what is our sex life going to look like? We're 20-something years old when we got married. Like, what do I do? And starting to infuse the work that we were doing, like, okay, can we talk about role play? How can we stimulate the mind in a sexual way so that there can be orgasm still? Let's talk about face sitting, right? Like, you know, how can we help your partner still give you pleasure, which will give them pleasure? Can we talk about mutual masturbation? Can we look at adaptive toys? Can we force PT to order you sex toys? Because that is actually what this person needs towards the quality of their life.
Well, going back to what you just said about shame and how shame then kind of closes off avenue of conversation that is very important to people, is it does show like how much gets left out. And then with that shame or with people are like, oh, you shouldn't be worried about your sex life if you are paraplegic or this, that, and like.
You should be happy you're alive.
Yeah, exactly. That's always kind of how it's presented. Like, you know, there are more things to being alive than, you know,
breathing.
just breathing and,
Right.
and eating
Yeah.
or drinking, you know, and someone who is injured or paraplegic or paralyzed or all of these things is to live a fulfilling life. And I think that there is that bias that people have who, you know, have use of all their limbs and things like that, where it's like, if I don't have that, then they don't think about a fulfilling life anymore. And there are so many ways and so many pleasures that you can have, no matter what your limitations are, that it needs to be fully recognized and needs to be an open conversation that people should be able to have with their medical providers. And
That shame was so deep that I no longer do that work in that capacity anymore, because they did not like that challenge that I was bringing to the table, or the lived experience I was having to go get the information to bring to the table.
so one of my early client situations, I was, I guess, what will be considered a surrogate now, because it wasn't like cuckolding in the cuckolding sense of you know, the whole DS dynamic and role play of cuckolding. It was more just like, you are a sex surrogate, you know, and it was very, it was fulfilling to be a part of that dynamic. Can you explain a little bit more about what that is?
So there is a formal profession of sex surrogacy. There's actually a practice where a mental health provider will sort of prescribe a client to have sexual experiences with someone who is a sex worker, but also sees a person in providing physical, sexual experiences with the understanding that it is for therapeutic purposes. Sometimes you see this with people who've experienced trauma and would like to have sexual experiences with someone in a safe way, one that they can communicate about first and explore their boundaries with.
That's not going to be all up in their shit afterwards.
Exactly. It could be someone who has a certain type of physical limitation or disability that it takes adaptive sex that may be more challenging to experience with, like picking up someone in a social situation. Yeah. And the idea is that just because you have a sex surrogate doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have other less formal sex. It's just that we have needs and desires in the meantime, in between time.
And you might not want to teach somebody all the things in that particular setting. And
right.
You want to take your time with somebody else before you got to teach it to them.
Right. Or a sex surrogate might be the person that teaches your partner how to have that sex with you in a safe way and like a way that, you enjoy. So there's that component. And then there's sex surrogates that sometimes people may be partnered where one partner is asexual or does not want to have a particular type of sex. And, so you were serving that space for someone who I believe had some traumatic experiences. And if I remember correctly, while you weren't working with that person's therapist or provider, it was strongly encouraged that they have a safe situation with someone.
That one was more recent, actually. Longer ago, I was with a couple, and the man in the couple, he had some injuries and wasn't able to achieve an erection.
Okay.
So, but I also would kind of help them engage in ways while she was engaging with me. And, oh man, that shit was hot as fuck. Like, I loved it.
See, it's so cool.
Wherever they are out there, I hope they still getting off to our experiences together.
That's so cool. One of the examples that I think often gets missed in, sex work is work, or the fact that people who are not between the ages of like 18 and like 55, like still have sex, still want to have sex, still deserve good sex and sexual experiences. And I say that because, we only sell sex to that demographic. For
sure. I was going to say, like, there are a lot of misconceptions about, people over the age of 55 and sex.
Right. Or people with disabilities, people living with like mental health, like all these different things that somehow sex gets pulled out of their
humanity.
Correct. Yeah. And that's why there is like sex disability justice advocates and activists because of that. Like our sex and sexuality and intimacy is a part of our human need, and it is a part of our human right. And these things, it gets pulled away from folks with mental health issues, folks that live in any type of like medical setting. They don't have privacy to engage in sex. They cannot have sexual partners that they're not married to or partnered with. And I used to see that in a long-term care setting that I worked at. It would be looked at as either this person is so old they don't need to be having people come in, or that person is only going after their money, or this person is sick, they shouldn't be having, like, there are some times that I don't feel well and having sex is like not high up there, but there's sometimes I don't feel well and like sex would definitely make it better. So whether that is like feeling down or depressed or anxious, like you could get a lot of that energy out, or feeling disconnected. It can be very grounding. Having cramps, it can really help relax your muscles.
Yeah, think about that all the times. People are, oh, got my cramps, leave me alone. No, she just doesn't want to have sex with you.
Exactly. Or, there's that medical stigma around sex and
That's true.
cramps. But so in these long-term care settings, I was really, really active. I was really pushing hard and advocating for people to be able to have access to safe sex. So condoms if they wanted it, lube, because we lose a lot of our vaginal lubrication over time with age and sickness and medication, things like that. Advocating for people to have visitors, how they wanted to have visitors, at the hour that they wanted to have visitors, with a closed door, doing whatever they wanted to do with those visitors.
That is definitely something I see a lot when it comes to for like older folk who stay in facilities where it's like they can't have visitors past a certain hour. You ain't telling me when people can't come in my house. I done lived this long. My mothers could come see me whenever they're ready, whenever I want them to.
Especially when you look at the price of what it costs to live in those places.
Real.
And then y'all say y'all supervising 24 hours a day, right? So then see this person in and see this person out.
Word.
So a lot of that work, and one of the simplest things that I was asking for is that, and when we do our intake of a client and you ask them everything, like, do you use drugs? Do you do this? Do you do that? Like, just ask, like, what is your intimacy lifestyle like right now? What is your sexual lifestyle? What would you like it to be? So we could then make that a part of your treatment goals.
Well, I mean, I think that kind of stigma also led to, what was that, a couple years ago when there was this news that came out about the villages.
Oh, what was they doing over there?
There was like this crazy high rate of STDs going around there because, when it comes to older folk, they're not bringing them condoms or, doing the same kind of checks and things like that they do with younger people when they still fucking.
I mean, they have more time and more money.
Word. Like you literally live in like a resort.
With your peers.
Word.
That's what we do at camp, right? I mean, So yeah, that, is a huge thing. And a part of that for me is like kind of bringing it back to injury and illness, whether it's mental health illness or physical illness or injury, is that if you incorporate people's intimacy and sex lives into their treatment plan, like, then you're treating the comprehensive person.
Yeah.
You're finding out what may be really important. Like, you don't have to tell me, you're not going to motivate me if injured to get up those, I don't know, I think we have like 17, 18 stairs in our house. But if you tell me that, like, your bedroom is upstairs and mine is downstairs, and I'm super motivated for us to be able to sleep in the same bed together, okay, tell the occupational therapist to put that as like a goal for me, and that's going to help me. Or with mental health illness, if you're not addressing that some of these medications may have an impact on how someone perform sexually, and that's really a big deal to them. Like, maybe they're a sex worker and they have, for their livelihood, they have to be able to perform, or it's just a part of their lifestyle that their sexual performance is really important to them. So taking this medication may cause an upset in that area of their life. If we are having that conversation, then we could look at alternatives.
For sure.
Right? We can look at performance enhancers. We can look at a different style of medication. We can look at taking the medication at a different time. Like, there's so many things that get lost because we do not want to have these conversations. Because, like you said, there's this sort of puritanical, like, gaze over this at, like, sex is only for one reason anyway. So you should just be happy you're alive and, like, toss that side that you shouldn't even be tapping into anyways out.
Yeah. I think that even goes just in not even like sex as a part of overall happiness.
Yeah.
It's not even like you're supposed to be happy. You're just supposed to be, you're happy that you're alive.
Right.
But besides that, like, other areas of happiness, like, there are certain places that you go and there are no, ramps for people with disabilities or things like that'll help people who are differently able to move around in the same space as other people just as easily.
Right.
You know, and I do think when it comes to sex specifically, you know, it's kind of like one thing is covered, and that is dick pills. Dick pills are covered. But, you know, it is not always a blood flow issue to why men are not achieving their erection. And, you know, when it comes to the mental aspect of those things, it's always looked over.
Yeah.
So in regards to mental health, and also people don't even add women or people who are not like cisgender male to that conversation really at all. Because I remember there was a women's Viagra that they were talking about for a hot minute. I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah, our insurance won't cover it specifically.
They said it won't cover that. It won't cover pads. It won't cover nothing.
And
no lady
and
parts
if you
are
can
covered
afford
in insurance.
it, we're gonna tax it. Yeah.
So, you know, when it comes to mental health and sexual performance, how is that something that can be covered in like a fully comprehensive medical plan?
I think there's a couple of things. You know, I don't think that people recognize, because one, we just don't have basic sex education, and then we certainly don't have, when things aren't going well, sex education, right? You know, and there's so many layers. And I also think we do not have mental health knowledge, just in general. So when I think people think about mental health, they tend to think about the extremes of mental health disordered presentation. When I look at high levels of stress as a threat to your mental health, and how many people you know are experiencing high levels of stress? Everybody, right? You know, and mental health is just a part of, it's a part of our overall hygiene. And so I do think that sometimes people have a hard time recognizing when their own mental health is having impact on their sexual desires and or performance, or, you know, just their overall behavior, right? So sometimes we see people withdraw from wanting to have sex, or people have a hard time sustaining being in the moment while having sex, or we see people making unhealthy choices related to sex because of, you know, whether it's high levels of stress or a specific diagnosis. So I think when people are talking about, like, you know, we need mental health reform, we need mental health care, that's a part of it. That's part of, like, the more you know about your own mental health hygiene, you can see how it's actually having an impact in relationships and how you interact with others, including sex. And then taking it a step further, you know, I have a lot of clients, specifically women and women identifying clients, that say, I can be having sex, but I'm not there. Like, what is wrong with me? Do I not like having sex? I'm like, okay, well, where are you? Where are you going? It's like to this incredible, crazy to-do list of things that they need to do. And all of these pressures, and if they're performing well enough or not, you know, and like the anxieties around their bodies, and if they're doing enough for their partner. And it's like, yeah, of course you're not enjoying yourself. Now, to my male presenting clients, it's a lot of the same things. I lose my erection. Okay, what's happening when you're losing your erection? It can sometimes be the anxiety of having lost it before. And there's all of this pressure that men are never supposed to lose their erection. And that's like not even biologically a thing. You know, there's all parts of our bodies that do different things at different points in time, but there's like this serious pressure that every single time.
Yeah, it's manhood itself is so tied to your virility.
Oh my gosh, it's exhausting.
But I do think there has to be some kind of shift in how we frame sex, right?
Yes.
Like, I think sex is like, if you have insertion, then that's the ultimate sex, right? And oral sex isn't viewed on the same level,
Right.
or hands, feet, conversation. All these different things are not viewed on the same level as if it's just insertion. And I mean, I think that that's kind of going back to the same kind of thing as procreative sex is viewed as the one, right? But I think in order, and this goes for anybody's level of physical and mental, ability. If we can look at sex as how we engage with another person, the intimacy that we share with that other person, and this could be intimacy with, someone you've been married to for 50 years or someone you just met 50 minutes ago.
Right.
But you can look at it like this is an experience that we're both going to share, that we would like to be pleasurable for both of us. And
all
however,
of us.
all of us, and however we choose to engage in it for us is important, and it's worth it. Instead of just looking like, if I have an erection that could cut glass and a pussy that's a slip and slide.
What? Nothing.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because our bodies do change, our bodies do shift, and how that moment is can be different with the same person on the same fucking day. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's like looking at the intimacy instead of just the physicality.
That, like, dead on. That is so much of obviously the work that
All right, I solved it, y'all. I'm out.
you really did. But no, stay for a while.
Okay.
That it really is the work that I know that you and I do, and it's like the conversations I couldn't have with some of the smartest people in medicine, that we couldn't make that connection to like why this is so important, how we can broaden the conversation around sex. Like, it's okay for us to talk about kink because that can broaden what sex looks like. It just sort of makes me think of like finding orgasmic moments in other things outside of your body, or it'll be a little silly, but yesterday actually. So for those who don't know, we have a newborn and a toddler, and we were in the guest bathroom brushing our teeth together, and it was such a like shared moment. We're alone and brushing our teeth. It was so pleasurable to me because I don't know, it was just cute, and we both like came in the house and like did the same thing. And then, like, within, like, I don't know, a minute and a half, comes our toddler and breaks that moment up. But we were not touching. We were not naked or anything like that. We just, like, had a moment to ourselves. And it was sort of silly and connected. And it brought me joy. And so, like, sharing, like, I think for people to hear, like, oh, two people who do porn and who...
connecting over that sexy moment of brushing our teeth.
That sexy moment of brushing our teeth. Like that, and, both of us are able-bodied folks that, don't have any physical challenges for the most part when it comes to having sex, but still find other ways to connect with each other, and, like, helping couples, thruples, and singles identify other things that bring them joy, how they can connect that to, intimacy, as you mentioned, how that intimacy, like how we experience orgasmic feelings in different parts of our body through different ways of being stimulated. And, like, I'm so interested in those things because I know that this shell will give out over time as, just being on this earth. And, like, what are ways that I'm going to be able to tap into so that I can continue to experience pleasure for as long as possible?
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you that. Are there any times within your life that you had to adapt to either your body changing or an injury or something that was going on mentally that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, all three. This was by no means... injury or an illness, but when I was pregnant, I was like throwing up a lot and just not really feeling well. And I know, like, when I was starting to come out off of that morning sickness time, for us it was just like, I don't want to do oral for a while. It's just like, it's just too close to where I've been feeling sick for so long. and like just expressing that, and it not being an expectation. Not like anything is ever an expectation, but that's just like, it's just not going to be a part of we're not pulling from that part of the toolbox right now. There have also been, I think, thinking of like mental health times, especially during the pandemic, where I felt, well, we are still in a pandemic,
regardless of what Joe Biden says.
Leave Joe Biden out of this. And his gas. But no, during the lockdown period of the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, I felt so stressed out. I was so anxious, and we would have to find like different ways of connecting, because I just did not feel incredibly like turned on in the same way. And I remember like we started to do cam shows on like Friday nights. And so like it was really like sort of like date night. We're going to get intimate tonight. Yeah. It gave us something to look forward to. And it was, for me, it was just like, this is good because I'm prioritizing this part of my health. Yeah. And then I would feel like this huge mental health relief because I was like so anxious all week long and not wanting the sex, and then planning it and being like, why didn't we plan that on Wednesday too? How about for you?
For me, I think about, was it 2016 or 2017? Mm-hmm. I was in a really, really fucked up car accident. Somebody ran a red light and slammed into me, and I needed back surgery after that. And I wasn't able to get the surgery right away. They had to plan it out and see if PT would help and all this other shit. And I remember, for a couple months, I was still shooting. I was in Miami at one point, and it's funny because that scene is up on, all the sites or whatever, and I'm looking at myself like, yo, you're in visible pain, dude. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I kind of had to learn what I could and could not do because a part of my disc was out, and I was having bone-to-bone contact in my spine. So it's like I had to relearn, I gotta stay up at this angle, or I gotta move this way, or I could do this for a certain amount of time before that shit is gonna be really, really painful. And, and then after the surgery, they told me don't twist for a year. I was like, how the fuck I'm gonna do that? People call me, I gotta turn around. But I really did have to learn, in order for the stem cells and all that shit that they did to set and heal, to not do certain activities. So sexually, certain positions are I love picking people up and all that other kind of shit. Don't do that shit for a year. So it did teach me, different ways and how to now, work with my body in that way. And also pain management. And that's also something I don't think that people really discuss when it comes to sex post-injury is, certain pain you're going to live with certain injuries for the rest of your life. So what level of pain is going to be in the way of your intimacy? Or what level of pain can you manage? What level of pain are you fuck it, I'm trying to get it in, so I'm willing to have this pleasure and pain at the same time, or it's unbearable. Right. What is a new position that I can do? What is a new way that I can, have sex? And then in the aspect of mentally, it is one of those things that can get in your way, because it's I really loved doing this. This is now something that I either have to put on hold or I will never do again because of this injury, because of this pain. So, I think that's why I also always do think about kind of how we started the show and that conversation about that couple is you can find out a new thing that you might be I like this shit better than the before thing. I ain't never fucked in a swing before. This swing is lit. You know what I'm saying? So I think being able to keep an open mind, and that is something that is hard to do, because we do fall in love with the ideas of our initial experiences. And this isn't even just with sex, but sex is a really good example of it, where it's like that first time that I did that shit, I've been chasing that high forever now. You know what I'm saying? But there's a whole lot of firsts that you can still do, because you are now technically in a new body or in a new situation or a new mind state. So now you have a whole new level of firsts. And if you can approach it with that kind of mentality, it does open itself up for a whole lot of enjoyment.
I completely agree. I love that idea of, like, once you can be vulnerable with your situation, with yourself, like accepting this is a new body or new situation that I'm working with, and then you can share that with your partners.
Yeah.
Then it really is endless, the different things that you can get into. And if you need some help finding that endless list of things that you can get into, like, here we are.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
And also, it's not even just a list that was compiled from research books. It's compiled from our experience and also Jasmine's research. But I think,
or me challenging my research books.
No, but I think, like, for me, it's so interesting because I do have some fans who are like, I noticed that you have these extra, like, so like I have like
they see the scars.
Yeah, they see my surgery scars, but my surgery scars are actually really close to a birthmark. Like, is your birthmark growing? I was like, no.
They're like, check that out. You know, if your birthmark starts changing, that you're supposed to look into that. They're looking out for you.
Yeah, they're looking out for me. But it's like, also, like, now, you know, it did take a lot of PT and a lot of reworking my body to get back to doing certain things, and also because of that whole journey, I learned other things that I like and other ways to maneuver and shit like that, literally and figuratively. So, you know, for everybody out there, it is not over.
No,
it's never over. You know, there's just new ways that you're gonna be able to experience your intimacy, your partner, yourself, and pleasure.
I will say that for so many of us having to go like to isolate the way that we did, we learned a lot through online. Like, we saw, you know, our experiences with our clients soar during the lockdowns because people were forced to find different ways to experience pleasure.
And you invented SDBDSM,
yes.
Socially distant.
BDSM. Yeah. I don't know that I invented it, but I like it.
I'm going to say you invented it.
Thank you. You're so good. I feel like I want us to, I do want to say, you know, we're all over the place with this conversation. And this is sort of just like an entry point of acknowledging the fact that people should have access to sexual pleasure, regardless of diagnosis, regardless of physical presentation, regardless of disorder. Like, it's your human right to experience sexual pleasure. Word. And so, you know, that being sort of the framework for this conversation that I am so excited to have with other people in the field that are developing adaptive furniture, adaptive sex toys, that are shooting content specifically for people with different types of bodies and different types of limitations, mobility limitations, people that are working with folks that have different neurodivergent presentations on how, you know, to sustain relationships, et cetera, et cetera. Like, there's so many people out there that are doing work to create pleasure for folks that you will not see an advertisement for, you know, or you will not have a provider ask you what your sexual goals are, your intimacy goals are. So I hope that those that are watching that are pros in this area reach out to us.
Yes, we would love to talk to you.
Yes, we would. And for our fans and our audience, please consider, you know, sex surrogates, sex therapists, sex workers to help you explore the many different ways that there are to engage intimately and center pleasure in your life.
Because there's no business like whole business. And thank y'all very much for tuning in. We will see you on the next one. Jet Set and Jasmine, King Noir, Royal Fetish Radio.
Royal Fetish.
My life's like a movie, paparazzi picture. If it's to get richer.